Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with the IP Business Talks. I'm today here with Magnus Hakvag. It's a long-standing business partner now, and it's the third time, I guess, that you are here, Magnus. So thank you very much for joining us. And to all of you who are maybe for the first time in this live event, so it's a live event. That means that you can write us in the chat to this event on LinkedIn, your comments, your questions, and we will be happy to pick that up and to bring it here in the show and discussing that when you're telling us what you would like to hear and when you have questions, especially to Magnus, but also to me or to our topic. So before we start, today we talk about serious games. I mean, for the ones who know Magnus for a little bit longer time, know that this is his topic. It's also my topic because we cooperate a lot, and he's also bringing that format, that serious games format, into my different study programs, now also in our diploma, which we delivered together this year for the first time together with the European Patent Office. So it's a joint diploma with a joint degree. And Magnus is delivering in the diploma also this serious game format, also in the master program. And so we have quite experience on that. And today we talk about a different one. It's a WIPO format, but also extremely fascinating. But first of all, for the ones who don't know you, Magnus, please tell us a little bit where you come from. And now we are in Norway, close to Oslo today. And tell them a little bit what is a serious game and why you're promoting that, and what it is about i3PM, where you are committee chair for training.
Yeah, so first I'll give you a bit of a background. So Shreyas, I got coffee, actually 2 cups of coffee to make sure that I can keep the energy up. So I'm outside of Oslo in Asker. It's a small town, not so big, but it's a nice town. I run House of Knowledge. I've been working with IP, standards and innovation, for 23 years now, maybe 25 actually. And a lot of that is related to capability building. And capability building links to building the business system organization and educating people. And we have a very advanced way of training individuals into this. And then that's using serious games, which is a more engaging way of doing it. Now, I have a few other hats as well, which we mentioned. I'm part of the i3PM training committee. So it's really engaging, meeting a lot of nice people as well. So you must follow us on LinkedIn. That is probably one of the best advices so far. And then we have part of the Master in Intellectual Property Law Management. We have the MLS. We have a tailored series game, which is only so far played there, which is how to build an IP department, which is really cool. It's really engaging, and you really can pinpoint the weak points and giving people, or make people get a reality check of where and how to build that department. So I got a background in physics. Yes.
That's right. And like always,
too much coffee.
You find all that content at the IP Business Academy, and we always document that and what also Magnus is doing with us, so you can really be a part of it. You can watch the scenes, you can understand what's going on. So this is all free of charge, available on the blog. So Magnus, this time we talk about you said capabilities building, competencies building. That is extremely important, because mostly nobody has really an educational training or formal training in IP management. So maybe you can say my students have that in the diploma or master program, but typically it's a practical field in which you come in, and then you simply try to do something to be useful for the company. You get certain challenges. And one of these challenges, especially for companies, is that you try to understand your environment, your competition. And so we call that business intelligence, what you're doing then to analyze what's going on out there. And especially you use then patent analytics, simply because patent is a very fruitful and information heavy kind of data, so you can learn a lot about that. So why do you think, or what is your motivation, especially to focus on that aspect of competencies? So why you engage on that?
So why engage in patent analytics and business intelligence? Well, it's quite obvious, because we could use trends in the market. We could use market trends and understand anything. But we haven't really looked into the biggest technical resource of the world, which is the patent databases. And with a structured search in those, we will have a lot of more insights of trends. Bit delay, but there's a lot of trends giving us understanding of where the competitors are moving, who's cooperating with whom, which is impossible to say. So you kind of have a look underneath of the water, which is really nice. And there's a lot of really nice information to get out of this. For example, I'm in this advisory of the Green 100 by Sagacious IP, and they have an overview of the most relevant 100 companies in the green space, which is really interesting to know. If we are, focus on the UN SDGs, and that is essential for you, we can get an overview of who are the real competitors or who are the real contributors to saving the planet. We can get information out from patent analytics. So it's obvious. It's a wealth of information when you have the capabilities.
Okay, got you. And you said there is a time lag. What do you mean with that in detail?
Yeah, no, it's all about when I patent. There's 18 months before it's published. It might be before. So the information in the patent databases is a bit delayed towards what's actually happening. But it's really interesting to get the information when it's there and structuring it to see the real trends of how it's moving. So you need to add other information in combination with. But when you have a proper scope in your patent analytics analysis, you can kind of get a lot of really interesting information out. And that's where we can move back into the games, which we mentioned so far. You need to be hands-on. You need to know your shit. You need to have Fingerspitzengefühl, which is quite essential.
Yeah, got you. I mean, there are experts out there, right? So I had, for example, some weeks ago, I talked with Stefan Brehn from Predori, and he's an expert in patent analytics and patent research, especially retrieval. And so that is really a profession. So what can we expect when somebody just get a training of some hours on that? So isn't that a little bit dangerous, that people who have not really an in-depth training in that field? So what is your experience on that?
No, so when you just do insights into having a look, you can get an overview and got some insights, and then you ask the experts, because you use it to find information to frame your scope, then talk to the experts. When you're more mature insights and you've done it some bits, you can start making more efforts into trying to get real insights out. But if you're not an expert, you should really ask for expert help to make the report. But if you have insights, you're a better client to order specific information which you need to make your decisions. And when we do training in this, it's to bring you up to that speed. Or when we do with this game with Viper, which we'll get back to, which is mentioned so far too, it's to make people understand how this is all connected and how should you move about understanding the principles, because that's where you need to start out. What are the principles of doing this kind of analytics? And then when you're more experienced, then you could go along alone.
Okay, got you. So what this is about here is about lowering the barriers. So so my experience is that we have people inside of the IP world, and they know nearly everything about patent information, patent data, the challenges, the translation problems, IPC issues, whatever. I mean, they can talk for hours about the quality of patent data and the comparability and incomparability of I don't know what, Japanese patent claims comparable to US claims or whatever. And on the other hand, what your frontier is, I understand now, is that you say together with WIPO, we should make patent information more accessible to the people, that they don't have this fear just to ask some questions and to get familiar with that kind of information, because it is so separated. So sometimes I have the feeling people think it's like higher mathematics, so algebra, analytics, calculus, that you say, oh God, this is a differentiation, or this is an integral, so I stay away from that because I have no training in calculus. And so that's a little bit what the technicians separate from the non-technicians is their mathematical skills. And so it's a little bit with these patent information, that it is kind of mystery of magic in separated for experts. Obviously that's not the idea of patent information. And what you try to do is to bring a basic understanding of patent analytics as a part of business intelligence to the people. Is that right?
Yes, partly. So what we've done so far is that we've started out with WIPO. We plan to develop 3 games on patent analytics. So we start out with the first game, which is intended for, in the long run, to be rolled out a bit more, to moving beyond where we started out. So they've been on 3 continents so far. We started in Africa, they done South America, and they did 2 weeks ago in India. And then they are training the patent experts of the patent offices. The next step will probably be moving into training and educating businesses, and people at ministry level don't really need to know a lot, but they need to understand what are the opportunities, what are the mechanics, how does it really tick on the inside, but not going into the nitty-gritty, because that's not necessary. But when you have a game, and I'll explain what a game is, it's a simulation where we're in control of all the variables. So make sure that you engage without an exchange tacit knowledge, which is doing a game. Now, then we could use a simplistic game as in a way of exchanging tacit knowledge among experts too. So you kind of got 2 dimensions. One is make people understand and agree on the principles. The other part is exchanging tacit knowledge, my experience with your experience. And then we could use it as a way of driving to build a community of practice. So I know whom to talk to next time. And I got some quite good insights and examples from my colleagues, which I can build in. So that's what we started out so far. And then there will be another game, which is a more advanced game for those who's been in the business a bit longer. And the third one will be a very advanced game where they also will be framing the scope. And that is the most difficult part of them all, because then you need to have stakeholder insights on top of actually making the nitty-gritty. So then that's combining it all into doing it all. So that's what we're doing now. And we've been in 3 continents so far, which is really cool.
And for these representatives of the officers, so I would understand that they have the job to help the national innovation systems, right? That they should promote patent analytics and using patent information for driving innovation in their countries. Is that right?
Yes. And no, WIPO already had its global innovation index, and then you can look into that, into the variables and feedbacks, how to improve your country's innovation performance as measured. Doing patent analytics, the patent office could offer services to support the government on some aspect of that in order to how to improve the innovation performance. So it's plugging in IP into the innovation ecosystem of the country, which is really interesting. But then they need the capabilities.
Absolutely. No, I think that makes a lot of sense because we have at the IP Business Academy at SAP, we have different ambassadors around the globe, and it's again and again fascinating. So in India, in Africa. And it is really fascinating what they post on LinkedIn when we discuss the different topics, that they have really a different perspective on IP, different kind of questions. and it is extremely important to meet the different needs, and not just saying, okay, IP is IP, that's correct. But for example, what I'm doing right now is helping a lot of people in their I have now a configurator for online marketing strategies out there. That's a fascinating tool. And I give it for free. Everybody can use it, whoever wants. And then it comes to me, and I try to create a marketing strategy for these guys. And what is absolutely fascinating is that again and again they say, when they fill out the form of the configurator, say, I have that all of that stakeholder, all of that target groups, all different target groups, but I don't want to post too much, and I don't think it's necessary, more or less, to configure, to design the message to the different target groups. And that's exactly the point, that what you say with the tacit knowledge and how to bring it, how to convey that has a lot to do with the responsiveness, with the level of knowledge, with the kind of issues which are in these different regions on that planet. And that is so important.
Yes.
So as you said, the basics are the basics. I mean, that's not the point. The point is what you're doing with that in your region. And my understanding is that you can really help with the format of a serious game to help here.
Yes, and the beauty is, when, for example, when in South Africa, Whiteboard team went down. They had a full week training, but they started with the game. It's an icebreaker. People are better connected with their colleagues, exchange a lot of practices, but all the normal training which follows refers to a joint, I would say, experience they all had. So the learning efficiency afterward is way more efficient. So then they could build on top. And kind of the agenda for WIPO is training local, because you have local insight, meaning you know the context. And then you could provide vetted support nationally, because you know the specific needs of those. And when we were in South Africa, that is the first time we ever experienced. We got dancing in the game. No, I had a goal of making people laugh because it might be fun, but that was my game. But we got dancing. I was like, damn, it's good to be down in South Africa and learning that how people really engage and give. And that was a awesome experience.
Sounds brilliant. That would be my next question. So what is your experience now with the different regions? So do you adapt the game, or do you adapt the way how you play the game, and how do you adapt to the different kind of reactions? Because that's a cultural issue, and I mean, you are obviously an European guy from northern part of Europe, and we have all our rucksack, with our cultural behavior. And is that something which is challenging in the different regions?
No, and that's the beauty. So when we design a game, we design them for the purpose of being universal, and we use on multiple levels. So if it decided to be at a, let's say,
you do it like Disney, okay? So it has to fit everywhere.
almost, because where we make the adjustment, that is not in the physical the physical board game. It's in the way we facilitate. So the way I introduce, I will have changed how you play. The way I engage with people throughout the game, I can make them work. If it's a multicultural team, I would facilitate differently if it's a one cultural team. So there are different aspects to this, of how I would facilitate. But the game itself is the same. And then I can adjust the level. If people are very skilled, I can ask a few supporting questions, and suddenly the difficulty got a lot worse. Or I can get more support, and suddenly I lower the bar. So everybody's met at their level. Or I can just, mitigate cultural differences. They're multicultural team, that sometimes are needed. But normally it works by just the introduction. So this is how we do it. And that is the beauty in the serious game, is that the teacher, it's the other players. You learn from each other. So we kind of solve the cultural aspect, that the teachers are your colleagues or those in your team. We just walk around, facilitate to make sure that everybody's happy. everybody feels safe. You establish psychological security, help with game mechanical questions, and then we could give some subject matter expertise answers. But the trainers are actually the other players, and that is the beauty, because there's no cultural problem. I don't have to. But what we encourage is that you have the dialogue in your own language. Our challenge as facilitators, I don't speak Swahili, for example. So then I would need to speak in English. I have no clue what I've been talking about, but they could speak to me in English. We continue.
Okay. So it's that's maybe one thing what I would like to understand. So what is the role here? So we have the game, and then we have the trainers. So what is the role of the trainers? Are they anyhow trained to become a trainer? And do they have to understand just the formal aspects of the game, or also all the details? Do they have to be an expert in the topic of the game?
It depends. So the largest group, but that is in a whole different topic, group we've ever done is 250 students simultaneously. But then there was trained student assistants to facilitate game mechanics, but they're not experts in the subject matter. Okay. They might have more insights than the students, and there are different levels. Or like when we did WIPO, they are subject matter experts, they are educators, and they've been trained, because we do train the trainer, because that is the best way to do it. So they are educated too by us to how to facilitate a serious game. They were engaged in developing, so they know the game by heart. They know the subject matter. So when they're moving around, they know what they're doing, and they can do all. But when you do larger groups, you need to have different roles. For example, we did at TU Berlin, we did an MBA in an other IP game. I wasn't even personally present. We had an iPad, and they moved me around like a talking head. And I was facilitating in game mechanics and subject matter, and the professor just moved me around, and he was facilitating group mechanics, or how people engaged. So there's different roles depending on the game and on the needs. But the smaller groups, then you just need one. If there's remote presence, I could have trained the HR team in a company, or people just good with people. And the subject matter expert could be on the iPad, and you just walk around. So it depends. And when during the Corona, with another game with the Lithuanian government on IP, that was really awesome. We trained a lot of people who tried the game, and there was one facilitator on each virtual team to facilitate in native language, because it's easier. And then we supervised those again, and they called us for more help. And there was more technical problems with the games, or challenges, or a need of more subject matter expertise. So there's multiple layers into this on how to want to do it, the scale, and how, well, depending on who you're training. If it's a senior officer of a company, you send in the hardcore people. If you are if you're dealing with people, you could do it different. Or students, you could use students to train the students and the professors there supervising. So it depends on who the audience is. When WIPE are doing the training, they are the expert in training, subject matter, and the game. And they build all the training on top of the game afterwards, because that's where you got all the superpowers of the game kind of present, which is really awesome to see. And when they've now done 3 different continents, it's the same response in all different continents. South America, in the African continent, and in India. The same response, and people start engaging and learning from each other. We're all humans, and that is the fun part, when you kind of do this cultural mitigation.
Got you. Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. So it means we have different levels. What I learned is you develop. So basically, what you definitely always do is you develop the game. So somebody comes to you and say, okay, I would like to convey this or that message. I would like to have this or that results, and then you make the concept for the game, but the implementation. The concrete implementation depends on the size, on the level of knowledge which the organization brings in, which would like to have the game. So the game is more format, and then the implementation is done together with the institution organization which would like to do it.
Yeah, so when Wipeout now continue doing training, I'm not involved. They're doing their training on their own, and they scale it, and they bring more people in, and they will continue doing excellent work. But let's say I was doing tech transfer. Then there's a lot of local adjustment because there's different needs. Because pattern analytics, that's a universal topic, like mathematics. But the moment I do tech transfer in a specific country, I would need to make a specific game for that particular country or an adjustment because their challenges are completely different than the neighboring country. Just do Norway, Sweden. Could be slightly different. Or I do Europe versus Asia. I would have done that completely different because there's culture different challenges. So yes, then there will be different games.
Innovation systems are different. Yeah, obviously. Got you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's. I would like to understand more these usage of serious game for capability building. So you mentioned that it has its advantage, especially to convey tacit knowledge. I mean, that's a huge thing because I try to explain always when I try to explain tacit knowledge, I say you can watch a piano player for years when he's playing piano, but you don't learn piano playing by watching it. So it's obvious that there are lots of skills of abilities cannot be learned just by watching, and also training is extremely hard. So when somebody wants to learn piano playing, one reason why it takes so long is that all these tacit knowledge is extremely hard to convey. And
yes,
and what is now the contribution? You mentioned also emotions. What is the contribution of this serious game framework when it comes to capacity building in IP?
So one of the essential part is that when I would do lectures, I need to make a certain amount of examples, which is relevant for some users. I can't meet them all. When I put them in a group, all examples are relevant because I need to support my argument. Let's say we are players in a group. And if I want to convince you of my proposed strategy, I need to use and convey examples which you comprehend and relate to. And then using my experiences, my wordings, and I start building a common understanding in the related topics. And the other beauty is that I might not even be using IP terminology. I might be using some other terminology, but we are talking about the same. So I kind of get this adjustment, get this handshaking of common understanding, and then building on top of that. And that is a superpower, I would say, of a serious game. But there's three kinds of serious games. I could use a game for training, exchanging perspectives, and I will program kind of cognitively the dialogue. So when people get an epiphany, I said they are really smart coming up with a solution. Well, they got that solution because I kind of programmed them to get that epiphany. The other part of the game is that I can use a game for data or research purposes. So I could disseminate the information from a research project and collect data. We did that with the Norwegian Patent Office, where we played a game on Global Innovation Index by Wipeout, and then we could get an input about what is the long-term, should be the long-term strategy. And that changed throughout the game, which is fun. And then that was actually the year before you joined in your lecture at the World IP Day in Norway. And then there's the third kind of game where the business case or the scenario in the game is your own company. So you have your company and all the insights, and we put a game on top of that. So it's a gamified self-assessment. So we could play a game where everything, all the insight, everything happening is to your company. And we can end up with a strategy for your company where I analyze it, kind of doing a conformity assessment towards something. Or we even made a game for GDPR, and we made afterwards, people said, GDPR is sexy. And when you make GDPR sexy, you know it works.
Absolutely. When you get that feedback, you made something right, I guess. Okay, so um, what I understand is that when you use that framework, so that people are emotionally committed, so it's like playing a game, and that is something, this is from early beginning of human beings, is that they learn in games. So this is obviously something which is extremely good status of our mind, that we feel really, like you mentioned, people feel safe. I have that
Yes.
point again and again in workshops, when we try to make, creative workshops, and when we have just people inside of the room, or also on the video conference, which are not really part of this creative thinking. So they just observe what's going on, and that leads to the fact that the ones who should shout out their ideas don't do that, because they don't feel safe. And
Yes.
and this is our status when we are in a game. We feel safe. We say it's a safe harbor. It's an environment in which we can learn and say things which may be stupid or not, seems not so clever or whatever, but it's right now a part of the game, and so it's okay. And that is a very effective way of learning things, compared to the traditional way of the
Oh yeah.
teacher stands in front of a class, and all are in these lean back situation and say, okay, now entertain me, honey. And it's not it's not really an involvement. It's just a consumer of something. I mean, that is
Yes.
maybe one of the tricks of that games, right?
Yes. So instead of having, let's say, you have a room of 50 people and have people which don't like to talk in audience, you don't know the people, you won't raise your voice, you won't say anything. If you bring them into a group of 5 and you first got the time to introduce yourself, you start in talking to them, you use your voice. Well, you could say anything. And you put in a made-believe scenario, which is not about you, it's about something else. You suddenly feel safe. And we enforce a few rules. Like we start out when I introduce the game that you got 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, which means observe 80% of the time, talk 20. And then people got the idea that we will enforce that. So make sure that you engage yourself, but let the others talk. And you're not allowed to laugh at others, but you could laugh with. And we introduce those rules. And when you set the code of conduct and you walk around like supervisors as facilitators, people feel very safe. They start engaging, start laughing, introduce, they get to know people. And when you got examples from others, those are very personal. And suddenly you know them. And now you're safe. And it works like a charm. And it's really awesome to say how people actually, we've done that in companies too. You could see sustained change in behavior of groups after playing games just by this. And sometimes we also say, well, no, actually always, no mansplaining, no womansplaining, because we're all experts. And then problem solved.
Yeah, got you. I mean, that is, yeah, obviously a question of rules, but it's also a question of the environment, of the spirit, which is in, and it's simply by calling it a game, right? Even when it's a serious game, by simply setting that scene, that now we are in a, let's say, separate room, in a separate environment.
Yes.
It's like a team building activity, and you make team building anywhere else and not in your typical office, so where you are normally, and simply bringing people into that different status, in that different mood, different stage, that help them also to break up, to open their mind for new perspectives, for example. And what puzzles me a little bit is when there is an outcome. I mean, you said there you use it to convey messages, but also to develop strategies. I mean, then you have to
Yes.
document, and you have to document the outcomes. So how are you doing that?
So we have different kinds of games. So when we are just wanting to inform and make people engage, we could use a game where everything is prepared, but it looks like a normal board game. And then to the extreme other end, we use a canvas, which means that you write sticky notes. So the tokens of the game is the sticky notes. You're actually making the game pieces yourself. So now we're more into the war room approach, where you are in control information. A part of the game is learning how to extract relevant information, see how is it interrelated, and making informed decisions. Well, you could take a photo of the canvas and ta-da, you got results. And sometimes we have to write reports. When we do, for example, a game which looks like a normal board game, well, sometimes we ask you to make notes throughout the game. You need to, for example, you need to find solutions to problem, make a policy. You make notes. Well, you got a takeaway. And at the end, we could do a wrap-up. And that is a lot of learning in a wrap-up, because then we can exchange between the groups. And then we could start writing on the whiteboard and exchange the relearning between the groups. And we got a double learning loop, because first they learn in the group, then they exchange across the groups. And if people don't like to talk to other groups, well, the facilitator steps in, gets information, and reads out loud on behalf of the group. And then I saw those guys, you had this brilliant idea, and then we write it down and they smile. And next time I come back, they will say something themselves. That's all about facilitation. But then we got to wrap up in the whiteboard. And then we can start, if this is done company internally, we said, okay, let's compare what you have of IP policy in advance. And now we're linking this to a structure, the structured competence of the firm. If they don't have a structured competence, well, you've got a starting point for a policy. If there is one, well, we can compare notes and say, is it similar? If it's similar, we just onboarded everybody to understand why it's there. But normally, there's a lot of inputs on how to actually improve the policy. So then that's the starting point of doing something. When we do games where we do more advanced one, we made one for Sintef in Norway, which is I would call it an intellectual asset mapping game. It was about biodiversity. And they said, how is that relate? We played it out throughout the entire corporates at all divisions, and they wanted to support the corporate strategy, understand what is the biodiversity strategy. Throughout the game, they aligned what is biodiversity, but in reality, they were mapping out all the relevant assets on what do they know and which capabilities do you have at each division to support the corporate strategy, and which services can they offer on the basis of that, which is kind of a develop services on the basis of your collective intellect. And then they did a joint game and compared all that, and then that was a starting point for improving the strategy. So we can do that as well. So it's all about how you document. We could video film it, we could talk to others. We even got games where you could prepare for a presentation. The second game is about debrief whatever you got of feedbacks, because it's in your head, but you can't get it out. Well, let's play a game, and I'll assist you get it out. That works as well.
Yeah, wonderful. The point why I'm asking is because we talked about creating a safe space, and let us assume we play a serious game, and we have video cameras, and every word and every activity would be recorded, so people would never ever think that this is a safe space. So documentation, whatever it means, it's always an issue. I had a keynote some weeks ago at Endresen in Switzerland, a big sensor company, and I gave a keynote about digitalization and IP. And then we had and this was recorded like normal, and then we had this big question answering session, and there are, I don't know, 250 people in the room, so not really relevant questions. And then the organizer said, okay, and after that we have a 1 hour fishbowl meeting in a separate room, and there's no recording, no documentation, nothing. So we are in that room, and in a fishbowl situation we discuss that. And as you can imagine, the decision was completely different, and people
Well, that is a
started
whole.
to talk about the real issues, the real challenges, the real pain points. So it was around 30 people, but it was a safe harbor. So it was promised that no documentation happens here, and that whatever is talked in that room stays in that room. And that's why I'm asking about the and what you said is you are very flexible in the question what will be documented here. And I guess these also, again, these flexibility creates, on the other hand, the success of such a game, that whether you would like to create a certain output in terms of um, strategy document or whatever, or you want to open people and to convey your message. I mean, that is, I guess, some of a key success factor.
Yes, so there's kind of two outputs. There's the learning objective, which is what capabilities or change in behavior are we aiming at? Those are a deliverable, but they are not tacit. And then there's the actual deliverable, and that depends on the game, on the audience, on the purpose. Normally in the game, the purpose is just make people engage and then do something. If it's something related to the organization, we don't document the tables, because then that's a fish tank. And we can collect everything afterwards, but fishbowl, sorry, and nobody knows who said what, but we got the results. So there's different way of doing this as well. But that is the beauty of the game board, is that nobody listens to the other boards. You could just listen to your own team, and that is a very small environment. And if nobody's recording that, we could record, for example, also instead the wrap-up, but then the facilitator can do something, but it's not linked to people. And what is essential, there's nobody in the line of command in your table. Everybody at the same management level. If there's a manager in the table, everybody's just sucking up. Nothing will happen. Or they're just listening to the manager and nobody will counter. So we put the managers in a different team, but at the same manageable level.
Yeah.
And that is essential.
Yeah, exactly. That is another success factor. So who sits on the table, and how to organize that. And I mean, that is again something where you need a certain experience, right? So it's not just the format. You need a certain experience for the setup to make it successful. That's obvious here. Magnus, we come to the end of this fascinating session.
Yes.
And before we end, I would like to ask you my final question. So, is there something which I should have asked you and I did not ask so far? Is there something which you want to tell us? Some of your plans, maybe?
Yes. So what we're planning to do potentially in cooperation with SciPay and I3PM and the I3PM Education Training Committee, is that we plan a roadshow. And we plan to do that in Munich. So we would like to invite some of you, whoever, when that pops up, to join in and play with us for free. But we'll get back to that. And then there is some opportunity. It might be that we even pop up in other cities, but there's an opportunity to try out this brilliant concept, which, well, yeah, it's brilliant. And then learn something from your colleagues, not from us, but from your colleagues or from your peers.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea, and I'm happy to support that. Basically, that's first of all, and everybody who watches now our live stream or later on the recording is invited to get in touch with Magnus or me or I3PM to show the interest of joining us there and bring in certain ideas. I mean, at least it is a fascinating way of learning this format of getting in touch of the spirit and the dynamics and to a certain extent the magic of that kind of learning experience. So, Magnus, thank you very much again. It's the third time that you are here in the show, and I have the feeling we could talk for the next hours. So thank you very much. Thank you for your work. especially for your input to the IP community. So it's not the only community which you support, but one of the communities in which you are most active. And thank you for that. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to have you next time. Bye-bye to Oslo.
See you, and life is good. See you. Bye.